It was past midnight in the heart of Manhattan. The city never truly slept. But inside the towering glass headquarters of Cole Enterprises, silence had taken over. James Cole, the elusive billionaire CEO, sat alone in his corner office on the 47th floor. The room was dimly lit, casting long shadows across the marble floor. He had everything: power, wealth, influence. But lately, he felt nothing. Just cold. Just empty. As he reached for his glass of scotch, something stopped him. A sound. Soft, distant, almost fragile, floated up through the ventilation shafts. A woman's voice, singing, not polished, not professional, but honest, raw, beautiful. He froze. Who would be singing in this building after hours? Without thinking, James rose and followed the voice, descending the empty hallways and dark staircases like a man chasing a memory. Down, past the executive, floors, past the luxury, until he reached the maintenance level. And there she was, mop in hand, eyes closed, singing like no one was watching. A janitor. And in that moment, he didn't see her job. He saw her soul. James had no idea. That one voice would echo louder than all the applause he'd ever received, and change everything he thought he knew about love. James Cole was the kind of man whose name alone could shake boardrooms. At 35, he had built an empire from ambition and ice. Handsome, calculated, and endlessly composed, James was a mystery wrapped in designer suits and silence. But behind the sleek image was a man scarred. Years ago, the only woman he ever loved betrayed him, not just emotionally but publicly, for money, fame, and headlines. Since then, James had stopped believing in love, stopped believing in people. He trusted numbers, contracts, and control. Nothing more. But then, there was her. Nia Bennett. She wasn't listed on any executive roster. She didn't walk in heels or carry a designer bag. She wore worn-out sneakers, carried a mop, and worked the night shift most people never saw. Nia was 26. Young, beautiful in a way that didn't try too hard. Her eyes held stories. Her smile held strength. A black woman with fire in her heart and dignity in her stride. She cleaned floors at night and cared for her younger brother by day, putting him through college with every hour she worked. James first noticed her by accident. Staying late one night, he passed her in the hallway. She looked down, polite, ready, to disappear like she always did. But then, another night, he heard her sing. Just a few notes, soft and clear, as she swept the marble floor outside the executive lounge. She thought she was alone. She wasn't. And for the first time in years, James didn't feel alone either. He watched her from a distance at first. How she moved with grace even when tired. How she greeted everyone with a quiet, "Good night," even when no one answered. She didn't ask for attention. She simply existed. And somehow that was enough to pull James in. Each night, he found new reasons to stay later, to listen, to glimpse her. He told himself it was nothing, but her song had already settled into a place in his heart where silence used to live. She was everything he never thought he needed, because she didn't want anything from him, except maybe to be seen. It was late again, nearly 1 a.m., and James found himself walking toward the elevator instead of the private exit he usually used. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe he knew she'd still be there. The elevator doors slid open. Nia stood, inside, earbuds in, a cleaning cart by her side. She looked up, startled, then stepped aside politely, He nodded silently and walked in. The doors closed. Then, clang, everything stopped. The elevator jolted, then froze between floors. The lights flickered. Silence. Naya pressed the emergency button, calm but slightly tense. "Looks like we're stuck," she said, pulling out her earbuds. James pulled out his phone. No signal. He exhaled slowly, more annoyed at himself than the situation. Nia glanced at him. "You okay?" He nodded, again distant. She studied him for a second. "You work upstairs?" she asked, curiosity in her tone. "You could say that," she smiled. "You don't talk much, huh?" He arched a brow. "Not unless there's a reason." Naya chuckled, leaning against the elevator wall. "You look like the type who's always got everything figured out, but also like you haven't slept in weeks." James blinked, surprised. No one ever spoke to him like that. "You don't know who I am, do you?" he asked, part amused. She tilted her head. "Should I?" He let out a soft laugh. "Most people do." "Well," she shrugged, "I judge people by their energy, not their job titles." James looked at her more closely. There was no angle, no flirtation, just honesty. Then she added softly, "Rich people always seem a little lonely to me. Maybe it's because no one dares to tell them the truth anymore." James froze. No one had ever said that to him. Not like that. Not without fear or agenda. In the silence that followed, he looked at her differently. Not as the janitor with the quiet voice, but as the only person who'd seen through his expensive armor. And strangely, he didn't want the elevator to start moving again. In a steel box hanging between floors, James found the first unfiltered moment he'd had in years, and it came from a woman who didn't even know his name. 3 nights had passed since the elevator incident, but James couldn't stop thinking about her, about how Nia had looked at him like he was just a man, not a brand. That week, he received an invitation to one of the year's most high-profile galas, an event swarming with media, investors, and the kind of women who smiled with their lips but never meant it. He hated those nights, but this time, he had an idea. The next evening, as Nia was wiping down the glass panels near the lobby, James approached. Not in a suit, not as a CEO, just as himself. "Would you come with me to a charity gala?" he asked casually, as if it were normal. Nia blinked. What?" "To a formal event." "As my date." Then he corrected himself. "As a friend. A fake one, actually. Nothing romantic. Just someone to help me avoid all the usual attention." She stared at him. "Is this a joke?" "No," he replied calmly. "I'll pay you for your time." Generously, she laughed in disbelief. "You want to hire me to be your fake date? Why me?" "Because," he said, "you're the first person who's ever looked at me without calculating what I could give them." Nia looked away. "That's not a compliment. That's just basic human decency." "I know," he said softly. She shook her head. "I'm not some toy you can rent to make a point at a rich people party." "I didn't mean it like that," James said, suddenly unsure of himself. She started to walk away, until he mentioned the payment. Enough to cover her brother's college tuition. For a full year, Nia stopped, turned back. Her eyes were clear, steady, unshaken. "I'll do it," she said, "but only on one condition." He waited. "You don't get to treat me like I'm a product. No orders, no pretending I'm something I'm not." James nodded. "Deal." She narrowed her eyes. You sure? He met her gaze. I wouldn't have asked if I wasn't. And just like that, the janitor and the billionaire entered a contract neither of them fully understood. One built not on trust or attraction, but necessity, and something far more dangerous: honesty. The gala shimmered with chandeliers, champagne, and diamonds, but no one sparkled like Nia. She walked beside James in a simple but elegant black dress he'd arranged for her. Hair curled softly, eyes glowing with quiet confidence. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, yet every head turned. Whispers followed her through the crowd. Who is she? Where did he find her? James heard them all, but he didn't care. His eyes never left her. She didn't just look beautiful, she was radiant, real. While the rest of the room felt artificial, Nia was breathing life into the space. For the first time in years, James laughed. Not the polite, practiced chuckle of high society, but a real gut-deep laugh. Nia had teased him about his stiff posture, comparing him to a marble statue. He couldn't even be mad. She was right. After the event, instead of the luxury car waiting out front, Nia tugged his sleeve. Come on, I'm taking you somewhere better. 15 minutes later, they were seated at a small food cart under flickering neon lights, sharing hot dogs and greasy fries. You eat this? He asked, amused. Best food in the city. She grinned, mouth full. He watched her, so unfiltered, so alive, and something inside him cracked open. Between bites and laughter, the conversation turned softer. I used to love someone, James said suddenly. She left when the money came. Said I changed. But it was her who saw me differently. Once I became valuable. Nia looked down, thoughtful. I've never been in love, she said quietly. He blinked. Never? No one's ever chosen. Me? She added. Not really. I've always just made sense. I was the reliable one, the girl who doesn't ask for much. Their eyes met across the plastic table. The world around them faded. Neither spoke, but something shifted. It was supposed to be pretend. Just one night. But under the city lights, with ketchup-stained napkins and soft confessions, it started to feel like the only real thing either of them had known in a very long time. The headlines came like knives. CEO's new flame, from mop to mansion. Is she the real Cinderella or just a gold digger? Janitor turned social climber? Photos of Nia at the gala spread like wildfire. Her dress, her laugh, her hand on James' arm. But the articles didn't celebrate her charm. They tore her apart. They exposed her job, her background. Even her younger brother's scholarship was called into question. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion. The board of directors demanded answers. Investors called James reckless. His mother, always polished and poised, sat across from him in his dull office and said with a cold voice, "She doesn't belong in your world. You'll ruin everything." Through it all, James stayed silent. He told himself he needed time to protect the company, to let the storm pass. But deep down, he was afraid. Afraid of losing everything he built. Afraid that maybe they were right. Nia, meanwhile, had stayed away. Until one night, she came to see him, face pale, hands shaking, holding the tabloid with her photo on it. You said this was fake, she said, her voice trembling. But it stopped feeling fake a long time ago. He looked at her, eyes conflicted, words trapped behind fear. Say something, James. Just once. Tell them they're wrong. Still, he said nothing. Nia's breath hitched. You think I'm here for your money, don't you? No, he whispered. But his silence screamed louder. She gave a hollow laugh, eyes glistening. You let them call me trash. You let them say I don't deserve you. He took a step forward. Nia, I just need time. She backed away. Time won't fix what you didn't fight for. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door, her voice cracking as she said, So in the end, I was just a janitor who walked into the wrong room, wasn't I? Days turned into nights, and still, she haunted him. Every quiet moment in the office, every echo in the marble hallways, reminded James of Nia. The sound of her humming in the elevator, her laughter echoing off cold glass walls. The way she had smiled, even while cleaning the floors beneath his feet. He saw her everywhere, and nowhere. He stopped attending board meetings, let calls go unanswered. His suits hung untouched in the closet. All that mattered now was finding her, not to apologize with flowers or money, but because without her, the silence had returned. And this time, it was unbearable. He drove through parts of the city he'd never seen, places without polished windows or luxury cars. He knocked on doors, showed photos, but no one knew where she'd gone. She quit last week, said a former coworker at the building. Said she needed to breathe. His heart sank. Then one evening, while driving past a crumbling neighborhood community board, he spotted a flyer. Free music class for local kids, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Beneath it, a photo. Nia, smiling. He followed the address to a worn-down building that smelled of crayons and hope. He walked in, heartbeat thudding in his ears. Inside, soft music floated down the hallway. Children's laughter. And then, a voice. Her voice. He paused outside the doorway. Through the glass, he saw her sitting with a group of kids, gently guiding their voices into harmony. Her eyes lit up when they sang. Her hands moved with care. And when she sang along with them, her voice was pure, soul-deep, and heartbreakingly beautiful. She didn't see him. He didn't move. Couldn't. For a moment, James simply stood there, watching the woman who had once cleaned his world without complaint, now lighting up a room full of tiny hearts. A single tear slid down his cheek, not out of guilt, but out of awe. The soft hum of children's voices faded as James stepped into the small, crowded room. Every head turned, but his eyes sought only one, Nia's. She looked up, startled, her expression a mix of surprise and guarded hope. Without hesitation, James moved forward, heart pounding louder than the music. Then, with a trembling breath, he knelt before her, the worn wooden floor beneath him grounding the moment. I'm not here as a CEO, he said, voice raw but steady. I'm here because I miss you, because you taught me how to love again, with my heart. The room fell silent. Nia's eyes filled with tears, tears that she had held back for too long. The weight of his words, the vulnerability he showed, broke through her walls. She stepped closer, her hands trembling, then wrapped her arms tightly around him. The years of pain, doubt, and silence melted away in that embrace. I was scared, she whispered against his chest, scared that I was never enough, that you saw me as just a janitor, not the woman I am. James pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. You're everything I never knew I needed. Not because of your job or where you come from, but because of who you are. Outside, the night air was cool and quiet. Hand in hand, they walked out of the community center, away from judgments, headlines, and empty expectations. No gala lights. No flashing cameras. Just two souls, finally finding their way back to each other. They strolled down the softly lit street, the city's hum fading into the background, replaced by the warmth of a simple touch. For the first time in a long time, James smiled without restraint. Nia squeezed his hand, her smile radiant in the streetlight. In that moment, they didn't need anything more than each other. This story reminds us that true love sees beyond wealth, status, or appearance. It's about connection, honesty, and the courage to be vulnerable. James and Nia's journey teaches us that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest barriers aren't external, but the doubts we carry inside ourselves. No matter who you are or where you come from, you deserve to be seen and loved for your true self. Have you ever judged someone by their background or status before truly knowing their story? How do you think society's expectations shape the way we see love and relationships? Share your thoughts below. We want to hear your stories. If you believe in the power of love that breaks barriers, please like, share, and subscribe to support more heartfelt stories like this. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode of our inspiring tales. And if this story moved you, leave a comment telling us what love means to you. Together, let's celebrate love in all its beautiful forms.